Hello everyone, welcome to Screenplay, focusing on the art and the craft of the Hollywood screenwriter. My name is Syd Field. Here from the Writers Guild Foundation Shavelson Web Library, we're with our guest Stuart Beattie. Welcome, Stuart.
Oh, thanks very much for having me, Syd. Good to be here.
Not only do I feel that you are an exceptionally unique screenwriter, but I just want to read a few of the things that you have going on right now, according to IMDb. The Baz Luhrmann Project, which is in pre-production.
Yes, the big Gone with the Wind in Australia is how he describes it, yes.
Spy Hunter, Nowhere to Roam.
Well, classic video game there, you know.
Oh.
Grew up on that game.
Ah, okay.
Peter Gunn theme.
Right.
Love that stuff.
And then we have Pirates of the Caribbean at the World's End, which is now filming.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We have 3:10 to Yuma, one of my favorite classic westerns.
That we've probably butchered, yes.
We'll talk about that later. That's now filming.
Uh-huh.
And in post-production at this moment is The Messengers.
Yes, another horror film.
So that is an amazingly large number of screenplays to be out in various stages.
There's about a half a dozen others, too, that IMDb doesn't have.
Well, so you're...
But yes, I agree. It's a lot. Yes.
It is a lot.
And I'm very busy.
So tell me something. How did this all begin? I notice you have a little lilt to your accent. Where are you from originally?
Yeah, I'm from Australia. I was born in Melbourne. I grew up in Sydney. And I had spent a year on exchange in my university program in Oregon State.
Why did you choose Oregon State?
I didn't choose it. It was the only one available. And I just knew I wanted to get to America. And Oregon was as good as Hollywood, you know, from someone from Sydney. So I got on the exchange. I won the exchange and went there for a year. And that's where I started reading Variety and started reading scripts and started writing scripts. The first draft of what became Collateral was written there. The first draft of Pirates, all that was written there.
And how old were you then?
19, going on 20.
And did you have a big background in seeing movies? Did you like movies?
Yeah. No, I loved movies. And I was kind of like the crazy kid because I loved movies. You know, coming from Sydney, it's not so much of a movie culture down there. So I would think nothing of seeing 5 movies in a day.
Really?
And yeah, but everyone else thought I was a little bit nuts.
You stayed at Oregon for a year?
Stayed at Oregon for a year. Then I went back and completed my degree. It was a 3-year degree in communications, majoring in film. And then at the end of... Sorry?
Did you decide that when you were at Oregon that you really wanted to explore film more as a medium?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I wanted to go straight into film, but I kind of grew up in a world where it was like, film wasn't really a job. And, you know, I'd say I want to be a filmmaker, and then people would say, okay, but really? So I had to have a backup degree, basically, and the idea was to do this communications degree, which would allow me to have done journalism. And that would have been a nice backup when the film thing didn't work out, basically. So I went to this small little college out in Bathurst, which is this tiny country town, and tiny university, but it was fantastic. And they had this exchange program. And so, yeah. So I went back, finished the program, and then I ended the last month of the degree. You had to have an internship somewhere, and I came over to LA and interned at a production company. And I've been here ever since. So that was 92. This is 2006, 15 years. So this week it is.
Congratulations. This is your
I just
anniversary.
realized that. This is my anniversary. Yeah, I've been here a while.
You came to LA.
And I enrolled in UCLA Extension, which gave me basically a 3-year work visa, and allowed me to do these great classes at night, which were taught by working writers, which was wonderful. You know, they would work in the day and they would come in at night and they would bring all their screenwriting buddies. So we got to meet David Koepp the week Jurassic Park came out. We got to meet Gary Ross the week Dave came out, you know, and just all these fantastic writers, Kevin Wade and all these people. And it was a room of 20 people, so you could really get your questions in, you could talk, and it was really informal and it was great. And I just learned so much in it. And they had an award there every year, the Diane Thomas Award.
Right.
I won that award. And
for what script?
It was an action script called Mayday, set in the Coast Guard. It's about rescue swimmers, about a female rescue swimmer. There were 4 female rescue swimmers in the entire Coast Guard at the time, and I thought that was a wonderful milieu, you know. So won that award, and winning that award got me an agent, and that script then got me my first job.
Mm-hmm.
So
how long did it take you to write the script of Mayday? I mean, were you working during the day before?
Yes, at the Taco Bell.
At the Taco
yes,
Bell?
on UCLA. Busiest Taco Bell in North America. And
what were you doing? Just counter work and everything?
Oh, yeah. Well, at first you start off making the things, and then you end up, cashiering, because once they figure out if you can do numbers, that's where, they want, people who can do that stuff. They really want, because the lines, you obviously just swell at lunchtime. 59-cent tacos and burritos. I can still do 59 plus 59 in my head. 3 times 59. Very easily, because that's what I did for a year and a half.
And during the day, your off time, you would write?
Every other time I would write. Yes, I didn't have much else of a life. I would work, I would go to class, and I would write, and occasionally sleep. Mm-hmm. And in that time, I probably wrote 5 or 6 screenplays.
Just kind of getting your teeth wet and finding out what the form was like, and
yes, although every time I thought, well, here, I've got it now. No, I've got it now. No, now I've got it. But yes, as I look back at it now, it's all that stuff.
What is it?
That perfect combination of everything coming together to tell a great story. And
had you worked on Collateral at this time, or Pirates?
Yeah, I'd worked on both of them. Every now and then I'd pull one of them out of the drawer and polish them up with the last 2 years of learning or knowledge or experience or whatever it was. I also, in this time, got a job reading scripts, which was the greatest thing. And I recommend that to every writer, because you see the same 5 mistakes that everyone's making, and you see the same 5 stories that everyone's telling. So you learn not to tell those stories and not to make those mistakes,
Do you remember what the 5 mistakes and the 5 stories are?
They're not really, but I do remember it was things like 30 pages in, you still had no idea what was going on, who the main characters were, what the stakes were. A lot of people had no stakes. If your hero doesn't achieve the goal, then what? And if you haven't got a what, you haven't got stakes. And then the hero doesn't care, and then I don't care. So very, things like that I still see in movies today. They get all the way through production, and no one has thought, hey, what are the stakes? And a big one, of course, is the why. Why do you need to tell this story? Why now? What does it say about us, who we are, and the world we live in? And that I see going on all the time as well, still.
I always talk about, you have to think of a screenplay when you're first starting out as if it were a noun. It's about a person in a place or places doing his or her thing. And that breaks down into either an action, what happens, and a character, who it happens to. So that's one of the it's there that we need to focus on, that every writer needs to focus on, and the why it happens.
And why it happens, yeah. Yeah, and usually it's the worst thing in the world happens. And it turns out to be the best thing that could have happened.
Exactly.
Because it's the only thing that could have broken that character out of their rut or their thing or whatever. I always ask, what does a character want? Why can't they have it? And that's Act 1.
What does a character want, and why can't they have it?
Exactly.
I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I was talking with Jim Cameron one time. He asked the question, if there were some force coming from the future to try and annihilate the human race and replace it with the machines, who would be the least likely person to fend off that revolution, basically? And he said, well, it would be someone working at a Taco Bell.
Right, there you go. Exactly, yeah. It's always more interesting if it's the least likely person. If it's Captain America, how interesting is that? He's just going to do what Captain America does. But if it's you or I, or someone that we can relate to, that never has to do anything like this, that's when it becomes engaging and interesting.
And it's also a question of conflict. I find all drama becomes conflict. And so you have to create what you want to create, then create obstacles to that, and there's how your conflict comes. One of the things I love so much about your writing is the way you integrate character within the action sequence itself. In Collateral, one is the jazz scene, because I was not expecting what he would do. I really didn't. I mean, he came in, I thought, really, maybe there's a break here. They're going to have a drink before he goes on to the next hit. He's got no choice in the matter anyway.
Right.
And you kind of lull us to sleep a little bit, and then suddenly at the very end, you see Vincent getting a little bit more on edge and a little bit tighter and tighter, and then suddenly, pow, pow, and he's gone. How do you structure that so the audience gets lulled, and then, bam, you just keep them, you knock them off, basically?
Yeah, it basically came from I didn't want the plot to be we go this one, then that one, then that one, then that one, and that one.
Right.
That would have been boring. So it was really a deliberate attempt to try and throw you off balance like that, to try and think, well, maybe we're not doing a hit right now. That specific scene was inspired really by two of my favorite scenes in two other films of mine that are favorites. One was in True Romance, where you've got Christopher Walken talking to Dennis Hopper. Wonderful. It's a 10-minute long scene. It's fantastic. And the whole time you're like, he's not going to kill him. No, he can't. And then boom, he does. And the other scene was in La Femme Nikita, the Luc Besson film, where he takes Nikita out for her birthday, and it's the first time she's been out in the world in 3 years, and he's got a present for her in this beautiful restaurant, and he slides the present, and she's just absolutely about to cry, and she goes to open. He's like, no, wait. The waiter pours some drinks, and okay, open it now. And she opens up, and it's a gun. And there are three people in a booth behind you. The middle one is your target. Get out through the back. And she realizes he's here for a job. And it's that, So I love both of those scenes, and I was looking for a way to kind of recreate that kind of tension. Like you say, that lull where you think, oh, we're not on a job. We're not on the plot right now, and don't know what's going to happen now, right?
Hope that maybe it's not going to happen.
Exactly.
Which keeps you more on the edge of the seat.
Exactly right, and of course, and that's what they're talking about. Vincent's talking about you don't know what the best way to live is when you don't know what's coming next. And you know what's happening next. You think and that's just boring. Guys can tell you 10 years where they're going to be from now. That's boring. I want to live where you don't know it. So he's actually kind of saying you really don't know why we're here, but you don't realize it until that gun goes, or until he starts saying, I'm brought here to kill you.
Sorry. Friends in Cartagena.
Exactly, right, exactly. So, it was very much a deliberate attempt. And if you're looking after that, they end up going to the hospital to see Max's mother after that. So again, and then after that, they go to the Mexican nightclub. So, it was a way of getting us away from just the hit thing. And it was deliberately crafted to do that.
How do you do your research?
Oh, every different way. There's the internet now, which is phenomenal. There are 1,000 books, there are great libraries. There are connections that you have to people who do this kind of work. Usually 6 degrees of separation. You can usually get to whoever you really need to get to, and you just make those calls, and you just get those people to start talking, and they do. People love talking about what they do and why they do it, especially when it's one of these really weird things that they probably don't get asked about that much, and that's where you get all the great stuff from, and that's when you learn to start being able to think like them, and then you can kind of have them say anything and you know what the answer is.
How much time approximately do you spend on research?
Oh, a lot of time. I believe in the whole, there's a reason why the words author, authenticity, and authority all come from the same Latin root, I think to be an author, you have to be an authority on the subject and then be able to write it authentically. They're all interconnected, and so I firmly believe in doing as much as it takes, and that can vary from a couple of months to 6 months to 8 months, a year even. It just how much is out there, and how much. When's that point where you just kind of feel, okay, I've really got an understanding here of what's going on, and at that point you want to stop and just kind of open the floodgates and get it all out at that point, because it's so in your head, and if you go on much longer, you'll start to forget all the great stuff.
Do you also do historical scripts?
No, I love history. I love knowing where we came from, because that's how we got here now.
That's right.
and the stuff in history is just so bizarre, you can never make it up. So I love history.
It's so important because you get so many ideas and many new impulses that you would have never thought of for anything.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's your stage, and you've got to know your stage to be able to know what would happen in your stage.
That's exactly.
So it's really as elemental as that. People often say that Coast Guard script I wrote that won the award. When I started meeting with agents, they were like, "So how long are you in the Coast Guard?" The script I wrote called James, it was about a ballet dancer, and people thought I was a ballet dancer, and they like, oh, no, I hate ballet. But you research it to a point where you're writing as an authority, and literally by the time I'm writing a screenplay about something, I could probably write a book about the subject, on my own, just because I have so much, knowledge floating around in my head. But that to me is the fun stuff, you know. It's funny, you'll go to dinner parties and you'll be silent the whole night, and then someone will bring up some obscure little thing. You go, I can talk about that, and you can bore everyone for 2 hours with every little thing, because you know every little thing about it. But, you know.
Which brings us basically to Pirates of the Caribbean.
Ah, yes.
So, I mean, that to me is a very, very interesting situation there, because number one, you originally created a script based on the ride back in 1991 at Oregon, right?
Yep.
And you tried to sell that with no luck at all.
Lots of jeers.
Lots of jeers as well.
Jeering, mocking, laughter, and a few finger pointings, yes.
And then how did you do your research before you did that first draft of the script on that, or the story outline?
I basically read every book on piracy there was. Lots of great, wonderful books by first-hand accounts or by history professors or pirate experts, whatever. I read everything I could, and also studied all those films that we wanted to emulate, all the Errol Flynn films, the Seahawk, the Captain Bloods, all those great things. And we also looked at the few contemporary ones there'd been and kind of found, okay, what went wrong there? Let's not make that mistake. Yeah.
I remember at one point when I was writing screenplays, I wanted to do a pirate film as well. And the first thing I did was read, and I read about Tortuga, and I read about all the things they did. And you have captured them and brought them in there as well, which was great.
Well, yeah, but it's because you read and because you know about Tortuga. If you're sitting there in the middle of Act 2 and you're like, what can I do now? Oh, we can go to Tortuga. Or if you're thinking, well, where would they get more guys? Tortuga, obviously. Or, the 3 or 4 other ports that were around there, and that, it all comes from that research. Like I say, you've got to know your stage to be able to play in it.
I want all you aspiring screenwriters out there to listen to this. Research becomes so important when you're designing a screenplay and creating a screenplay.
Well, you talked about, what are those 5 mistakes? Another one was an inauthentic world.
Inauthentic world. Yeah, we see that in television all the time.
All the time, exactly. Someone who obviously hasn't done the work and is just recycling a bunch of old cliches.
So let's go back to Oregon.
Yes.
1991.
I'm on a field throwing a frisbee with a guy named Kevin McBride, who was a business student who was also doing summer school. And we said, let's write a movie. Let's do a movie that hasn't been done in a long time. What movie hasn't been done in a long time? And we were thinking, and then suddenly we both said, Pirates. It hasn't been a great pirate movie in a long time. And after that, it just went to work, researching.
Right.
Reading, and then coming up with that idea of, it should be Pirates of the Caribbean. It should be Disney. There should be scenes from the ride. It'd be fantastic.
And what did you do then? Did you write an outline, an idea, a log line?
I wrote a script, which I rewrote many times, called Quest of the Caribbean.
You just sat down and wrote a script based on your impulse that this would be a good film?
Yeah, well, because I know it hadn't been done in a long time, and I basically approach everything I write with, what would I like to see? Because I think that's all you can do. You can't think, what would they like to see? What would the audience like to see? What are they looking for now? You just have to kind of go, well, what would I want to see? And then hope that other people do too. So I want to see a good pirate movie. There hadn't been a good one done in so long. So I wrote that movie. It's the kind of movie that I grew up on as a kid. It was Raiders of the Lost Ark on the high seas. That's how I used to pitch it to everyone. Because, Raiders was, one of those great films for me that really brought me here to do this.
And how closely were you able to utilize the elements of the ride into the screenplay?
Well, I basically told the story first, and then whenever I could, I would put in scenes from the ride. So, I wouldn't create a scene in a dungeon just so I could have the dog and the keys. I would be telling the story, and the dungeon scene would come along, and I'd go, oh, I can put the dog and the keys in here. Because I think that's the only real way, and that's the way we ended up doing it in the film, was that kind of inside-out approach, where you start first with the story, and then if you can put moments of the ride in, put them in. Not going, okay, here are the 7 moments in the ride that everyone knows, how do we weave a story around that, which is more outside in, which I think wouldn't have created as good a story. So I wrote that script, Quest of the Caribbean, and started shopping it around town.
So after you finished the screenplay, you had this 120 pages in your hand.
Yep.
What did you do then?
I rewrote it about 5 times.
Okay.
And then
sharpening character, plot.
Yeah, sharpened plot, character, moments, pacing, tightened it, put different jokes in, because it was a lighthearted kind of a romp, it was a lot of fun. and then I sent it to the only person I knew in Los Angeles, who was an Australian producer, who was basically a USC film graduate, and she shopped it around town, and we got lots of interest from people. But in the end, it was always this is way too expensive. This is $100 million film, and we just can't do that. And so nothing ever happened with it. But it was the first script of mine that actually went around Hollywood.
And did Disney notice any of the elements of the ride in there?
Oh, sure, yeah,
and they passed anyway.
They passed anyway, right? Exactly, because it wasn't in their corporate thinking at that time to do it.
Right.
And then it was just a matter of, over the years, pulling it out of the box and submitting it again through maybe a producer who has a deal at Disney now, and getting them excited about it, and then getting them to submit it, and and I did that for a number of years, until finally, the Disney corporate powers basically had this idea to make 3 rides into films, and it was Country Bears Picnic, Haunted House, and Pirates, and they had their in-house writer at the time do the first draft of Pirates, and he did some drafts for them, and it just wasn't working for them, and so that's when they remembered that crazy Australian guy who kept saying for all these years to do it. And by that time I had sold the script Collateral, so they were like, okay, well, DreamWorks trusts him, well, maybe we can trust him too. And so they brought me in, and they were like, what do you think? And I said, you know what I think? I've been saying this for 10 years. Let me do a draft. Let me show you what this can be. And 6 weeks later, I gave them the first draft, and they greenlit it.
So you finished your second draft. They liked
the first draft. They're like, this is it. This is the movie. Great. Let's get a producer and let's make it. Jerry Bruckheimer had another pirate movie in development with them at the time, so they said, well, let's give it to Jerry and see if he responds to it. He did, and he basically went and got Johnny and Gore, and I did basically another draft for them. And then he brought in Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio, who are guys who had just written Shrek, fantastic writers.
Yes.
And the big joke, of course, was that when I was developing it, the Disney executives were like, all right, now no ghost pirates, right? We don't want any supernatural stuff in this at all, just straight pirate movie. And I was like, all right, cool, I can do that. And then Ted and Terry came in and went, ghost pirates. And they're great. So they're big writers, and people, that's how the business works,
How did you feel when you knew that they were brought in to rewrite your draft?
Oh, it always sucks, but that's the business, And it was a huge film, and I was still a nobody writer, so I kind of knew in the back of my head it was inevitable. The good thing was that they were good writers, they didn't bring in bad writers that killed it.
Yes.
They brought in good writers that helped see it through production and now into, the second and third films. So it, as far as being replaced goes, that there's no really better way to be replaced.
We're going to talk a little bit now about Pirates of the Caribbean, because that to me is such an extraordinary journey from an idea which is good, valid, and right for a film production, to the actual obstacles that you that you have to confront and deal with in order to finally end up with a movie that's on the screen. It's an amazing process. Didn't Jay Wolpert come on first?
That's Jay. That's Disney's guy. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I see. He was on.
Jay had written Count of Monte Cristo for them.
And then they brought you in for your draft.
Yes. Now,
had he created the Jack Sparrow character?
No, that was me.
What was your original idea for who the Jack Sparrow character was?
I just knew I wanted a great, fun, roguish guy. The way the Disney guys pitched it to me, they were like, we want to have like a Luke Skywalker type pirate and a Han Solo type pirate team up to rescue, kind of like a Princess Leia type, from, this is how they pitched it. And I was like, great, and basically it was creating that Han Solo type roguish guy who you could never count on, who was always 10 steps ahead of everyone, but who made you think that he was 10 steps behind. And that was just the great fun of him, and flying by the seat of his pants the whole time and just getting in more and more and more trouble until at the end he triumphs. But he's that rogue, that scoundrel that you just can't rely on, and he knows he's bad, and whenever he's good, it's reluctant, and it's he's kicking and screaming and doesn't want to do it. It was just all those fun elements that goes into kind of what I thought of as an archetypal fun pirate. It was Errol Flynn. It was that rogue,
Right.
you know, the swashbuckling rogue.
Or Keith Richards.
Oh, Keith, yeah. Well, that was the big surprise, wasn't it? Yeah.
Had you thought of Keith Richards, or was that Terry Rossio and Ted Elliott?
No, that was Johnny Depp. That was
Johnny Depp?
God, yeah, yeah. No. We wrote him as Errol Flynn. You know, I mean, you know, had him do all the things we do, like, you know, stealing the smaller ship to get the bigger ship. All those things, yeah, all that stuff was written. Every word is written, but there was just a way that he interpreted it, that he said those words that just kind of, you know, shocked everyone, and, you know, scared a lot of people, and but ended up really working. You know,
I heard somewhere, I read somewhere that Jack Sparrow was defined as a character who even when he's telling you the truth,
Yes.
is not telling you the truth.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly him. And the sparrow came from, you know, I just always imagined him as like that beautiful bird that should never be caged, and everyone's trying to cage him the whole movie, and that's where the sparrow came from.
And that struggle for freedom all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The same thing was with Elizabeth Swann. You know, she was beautiful like a swan. I was in a real animal naming phase at the time, obviously. But yeah, that was the idea behind him.
So I wanted to talk about, again,
Yeah.
these wonderful action sequences that you have there. Was there anything that you saw that you wrote, that you saw that you really thought worked very well in the script?
Yeah, the favorite part for me was the stealing the one boat to get to the other. That was an idea that I had that was really all about his character. You know, he wouldn't just. Firstly, he's a character who'd want the biggest boat, but secondly, he's the guy who wouldn't be dumb enough to just go and try and get the biggest boat. And he's a sly, manipulative dog, so he goes and makes you think he's still in the smaller boat, and you know, gets onto the bigger boat. You know,
Yeah,
that
that's a
kind of
great
stuff.
little scene. I love that.
And it informs character. It's all about who Jack is
Yes.
and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So.
I believe that in screenwriting, it's really finding places where silence works better than words, or action becomes character.